Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, powered by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. The NHL season is technically not over. There will be at least one more game before it's officially over. So that's a thing.
I didn't watch the last game. I forgot I felt like I forgot it was happening. I had other things going on, and then I checked the score later and was like, oh!
Yep.
Like, okay.
I didn't watch it either because Xfinity went out.
Oh, nice.
But when the score was 8-1, I guess I didn't miss too much.
Yeah.
I did watch it. My dad put it on because we watch Lifetime movies together, and after the last one finished, he didn't want us to get trapped in another one, and new hockey would be the break that we needed.
There you go. I don't know if I would call that game a break, but
Yeah. And then by the end of the first period, you guys were doing something else.
True.
No, not the main topic of today, though. Today we're focusing in on the Avs free agency talks, which I'll be upfront with you. The majority of the work the Avs have to do this offseason is their forward core, fleshing that out, figuring out where guys are going to go. But because of that, the defensive conversation has flown under the radar a little bit for the Avs. They, at minimum, will have one defensive spot to fill externally, possibly two, depending on how you see things. And I know we've talked about this side of it before, but let's start here. Do we all see Sam Malinski as a full-time NHLer next season?
I mean, he should be.
I hate this answer so much because it's right.
Yeah, he should be. I just don't trust them to do it.
Yeah.
Do you trust them to give him a chance up front?
Yeah. Like, I trust him. I trust them to give him decent competition that come preseason time, we could be like, he could beat that guy out. You know, he could beat that guy, you know, whatever. But, like, I don't think they're going to go out and be like, all right, here's 3 surefire NHL guys dropped in front of him without the removal of another one. So I think that they'll definitely look at him and say, yeah, we want him to compete. We signed him. He played a quarter of the season for us last year. He showed really well for the Eagles. Like, there's a lot for us to really like about Sam Malinski's game.
Just play him.
Yeah. It really is like a just play him, and then if you get to the trade deadline and he's kind of played his way out of that lineup, then you know.
Yep.
But I don't want it to be kind of like where they ended up with Gustafsson in this last year of,
we have no idea what we have.
Yeah, you've got this guy, you end up putting other guys in front of him for whatever reason, and then you get to the second half of the season, he plays, he earns the job that he probably should have had from the start, and then you get into a postseason where you're like, well, we don't really trust him all the way with this. Like, you want to feel like they've given Sam Malinski every opportunity here to succeed or fail based on his own merits. So
Sure.
Ow.
Cramping up there, bud?
That hurt. So I do think that I think Sam Malinski should be we should really be inking him into the NHL, but I don't trust the Avs to do that.
Yeah. I think Annanen's a good example because Annanen had done everything in his development arc to warrant more of a look out of camp, especially because of the camp he had last year. And I think they obviously weren't expecting him to get injured when he did. I think they thought they had more time than they did to give him a regular season look, only for the injury to hamper those plans. And so I'm sure in hindsight, they would have liked to go back and give Annanen more of a look coming straight out of camp, just knowing what he was capable of in the back half of the season. And to AJ's point, you don't want them to run into that type of problem with Malinski. I think with young defensemen too, it's just the type of position that needs a little bit of runway, and you don't want them to prematurely give up on him because you'll never see his potential if that happens.
If they claim a guy on waivers in late September to play ahead of Malinski, I will be annoyed.
It had better be a good one.
Yeah.
Like, it had better be somebody that you think is going to play serious minutes for you. You know, like the Patrick Nemeth claim ended up being a really good one.
The first time around.
Yeah, his first Colorado stint, he was really solid.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, I can live with that. That's because then Malinski's just good depth for you.
Sure.
But if it's a Malinski caliber of player, he just happens to be 2 years older, or unlikely given Malinski's age, but like has 200 games more or whatever, 100 games more. It's a Caleb Jones type. You're like, what are we doing here? Yeah. That would be frustrating.
Agreed. It does feel like in certain ways the Avs have to get out of their own way with guys like Malinski and Annan, and as you both mentioned, to give them some opportunity. And, obviously they can't just full send it and not have anyone else, but that's what a 7th D is for. That's what the trade deadline is for. That's what you leave yourself other options there while still giving opportunity to someone like a Malinski.
Yeah.
With that being said, if we all believe Malinski should at least be in the lineup for a decent portion of the season, if you're going into this free agency market as the Avs, which it is not a very good defensive free agency market, to be clear, are you looking directly for a pairing mate for him, or are you looking at something that maybe could allow you to adjust your roster in some other way?
I do think you're kind of going into it. They should go into it with the idea of a guy playing alongside Malinski. Okay. Because if you go and get, this is the one thing about my desire for them to go get Oliver Shillington.
Sure.
Is that Shillington and Malinski together makes your third pairing. You're not playing either one of them on your power play. You really shouldn't play either one of them on your PK.
Yep. So
now you have got an entire bottom pairing that is overly taxing on your top 4 again. Like it's kind of the same conversation we have with the forwards, where your 4th line guys need to be able to do some of the specialty jobs for you. And so that's
the concern. Yeah.
And I use Shillington as kind of the example because I think he's a really good fit here, but you can see where you would say, okay, well, what is our third pairing then? Because if you get a Shillington, then you should really get a guy to play ahead of Malinski, and Malinski should be your fill-in.
Sure.
And that means you need to get a defensive guy like a Yanni Hakanpää type, right?
Yep.
But if you go and you target kind of a more defensive-oriented guy that you're comfortable putting on your PK on the left side, and his name is not Jack Johnson, we're just skipping over. This assumes that the Avs are moving on from Jack Johnson. Obviously, if they don't, then there's nothing to talk about. He comes back. We're all very familiar with it.
This whole podcast is moot. You know who Jack Johnson is.
Exactly. Then you do really want a guy that brings some size, some physicality, PK acumen, because then it's easy to put him next to Malinski and say that, okay, our defense is balanced, our skill sets are balanced, this all fits, this is a nice little puzzle together. And historically, just easier to find one of those guys.
Sure.
A third pairing left-handed defenseman that'll kill penalties for you should be, again, in theory, a much easier find than
a top 4 or whatever.
Yeah. Than a right-handed guy or one that can really skate and move pucks, et cetera, et cetera.
I think in looking at what they have tried with the third pair too, in both Caleb Jones and Malinski getting opportunity there, it is important to find a partner then who will complement that type of player more than Jack Johnson did. I think that's where, whether you're penciling Malinski on that bottom pair or not, it does seem like there's interest in a player that kind of fits that mold, a little bit younger and a little bit more mobile, like Malinski or Jones. And so in order to have more success with that type of player, Jack Johnson and other players of his caliber aren't the right fit there because they're just not as agile. They might be more of the stay-at-home defenseman type, but we saw the way that limited off the rush for players like Jones and Malinski, and those are the type of players that come with risk, so you need somebody who is a little bit quicker on the back check, and that just isn't a Jack Johnson type. And that's why I think if they are to target somebody who's responsible defensively, which I think they should because of what I just mentioned about them being a little bit of risk, the Malinski or the Jones type, they still need somebody who can get around, who has a little bit of jet fuel left in their skates. And that's not to just take a jab at Jack Johnson specifically. There's other players in this free agent list that would be very similar to Jack Johnson in that right. And so it's why I think they have to be a little bit cautious in the type of player that they target. And there's some names in there that I'm interested in that I'm not sure will be an option. Like Mike Riley, I think would be a great fit there. But I think that
Gonna be tough. Yeah.
I think that they would have a lot of interest in keeping him on and getting an extension done there. But it's why I'm looking at a player like Riley for the third pair in Colorado, because I do think to get the best out of a Jones or a Malinski, you need better than Jack Johnson as the answer there.
I would say this. At minimum, they need the Jack Johnson from 2 years ago. Now, that version of Jack Johnson wasn't particularly good either, but he wasn't a complete boat anchor for whoever his partner was at that time. It was passable. These last 2 seasons, Johnson has made everyone he's played with so much worse statistically that you can't keep doing it. I just don't see how you can see the results of that and say, yeah, no, we want to keep doing something like this. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and you look at Sean Walker as a good example of this, because they pay a first-round pick for Sean Walker, and it's also to move Ryan Johansson's contract, but in part, large part, because of Sean Walker.
Yep.
And then they drop him on their third pairing next to Jack Johnson. You watch Sean Walker. This is not to say Sean Walker was amazing for the Avs in the postseason, regular season, any of that. He wasn't. He had his ups and downs. His ups were really good. His downs were pretty tough to watch.
Yep.
But you see in the limited time that he played away from Jack Johnson, much better fit. He worked a lot better.
Yep.
Next to Jack Johnson, he really struggled. Okay. You can use in this example, Sean Walker is kind of the stand-in for Sam Malinski next season. All right, you're going to put Jack Johnson, you're going to bring him back. Have you gotten any better? He's just gotten a year older. He's going to get a touch slower. You have multiple years of consistent results of Jack Johnson dragging down these pairings.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Johnson's consistent. His best attributes are that he plays every single day and that the coaching staff loves him.
Yep.
Like,
that end of list.
Yeah. Like the intangible stuff is all good. Coaching staff, the locker room, he's well liked.
All great stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to play hockey.
Yeah, and if I had any belief whatsoever that they were going to have him, they could bring him back and actually use him as a 7D, I wouldn't have strong objections there.
But he's a 6, not a 7.
Because they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
They're not going to play Jack Johnson behind Sam Malinski or anybody else. They're not going to do that. And so I'm just like, you have to take the shiny toy away from him and give him a different toy. Otherwise, he's going to keep using that one no matter what.
It's a great point, because we did sense like Nolan Pratt had an attachment to players like Jack Johnson. There's a familiarity and a trust, like that type of security blanket that Jared Bednar and JT Compher was. The difference is the impact Compher had on the lineup justified being the security blanket, whereas Jack Johnson, the foot speed just isn't there anymore.
Yep.
It's a liability at this point. And I think you have to make that tough judgment call, because if he is there as an option, guys like Prater can't help themselves. They just like him and trust him too much.
Yep.
You shouldn't even have to make Prater make that decision.
Yeah.
The front office should make it for him.
Exactly.
Yep. Agreed.
You've had a year and a half to try to find an excuse to move on here, and you just didn't.
Yep.
So take it away.
We're done here.
Yeah. Chris McFarland, it's on you now. But move on. And I do wonder, like, the way that he talked about it at that presser with Landy, where he was like, look, he talked about Johnson and Cogs.
Yeah.
We have until the last day of June to talk to those guys, so we'll see. To me, that sounded like very respectful. I'm not saying no, but I'm not in a hurry. Because you would think if the front office was like, we're happy with this, we're not going to take a look around,
It'd get done.
you'd think that both of those guys would be back on minimum deals already.
You'd throw a minimum deal at Cogliano and he'd be back if you wanted him back.
And same with Jack Johnson. Like I guess that's the third best thing about Jack Johnson. He keeps signing cheap deals. That's about it, though.
That's true.
Like, if the Avs really wanted to do that, I think that would already be done. I think that they could end up, both of those guys could end up being free agent safety nets for the organization where they're not in a huge hurry to go look around.
If all of our tampering goes horribly, we can come back to these guys.
Exactly. All of our tampering does not go well. The day after the draft, they're sitting on the phones down at Ball Arena back in Denver, and they're like, everybody's too expensive. We have to do this again. Okay. But if they could avoid that, I think Mike Riley's and Oliver Shillington are my two favorite guys. Just stylistically, they fit, the way they skate, the way that they can move a puck. Defensively, you are imperfect there. But let's be real. It does not matter who you get for a third pairing. They will be imperfect. There is no, like...
That's why they're on the third pairing.
Exactly. There's no one guy that's out there that you're like, I'm going to put him on the third pairing, and I am going to love this. You might in time, but the day that you bring them in, you know, okay, we've got to manage. These are the ups and downs. These are the pros and cons.
For sure. There are a couple of guys I want to get into in that spot that we'll talk about in just a minute. But before we do, we are brought to you by Toyota. Make sure you're hitting up your local Front Range Toyota dealerships and checking out all the vehicles they have to offer. They have something for everyone all over, especially here in Colorado. 17 different all-wheel drive vehicles when it comes to Toyota. So whether it's that 4Runner or the RAV4 or anything else, maybe you're looking for a truck with all-wheel drive like the Tundra, Toyota's got you covered. Trucks are in their DNA. They've been doing those forever. They have their all-new trucks for the 2024 year. Make sure you're checking out those. And, of course, 16 different hybrid vehicles, the most of anyone that you can find if you want to go get yourself a hybrid, too. So go check out your local Front Range Toyota dealerships to get the official vehicle of DNVR. Of course, you can find Toyotas at any number of locations, whoever's closest to you, including AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Go get the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and the official vehicle of DNVR. And, you know, kind of a big purchase to go get a car, so make sure you're taking care of your money with Westera Credit Union. And get in with Westera. They've been around here in Colorado for 90 years with 9 different locations in the Denver metro area, and they were founded by 8 teachers, so they're all about education when it comes to the financial markets. They just launched an awesome new product called the Smart Money Checking, which allows you to get 6% APY on your first $2,000 each month. And as your balance grows, so does your potential to unlock additional great rates for higher balances. Go check them out. If you have it, you can even get their rewards debit card, which has no monthly or maintenance fees to earn even more. If you like earning money, doing the things you're already doing with your checking account, visit westeracu.com/smartmoney for more details. Membership eligibility required, insured by NCUA. Restrictions and conditions apply. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. I'm going to bring up a name that everyone's going to hate. You might already know what name this is if you checked out our roundtable from last week, where we talked about some free agency things. If you want more information on some forwards and other stuff, make sure you go check out that roundtable over on the DNVR.com. But as a number of these conversations have had, we know how the Avalanche operate. We might know the type of player they might be looking for, Jack Johnson-esque style. So let me throw Matt Grzelcyk's name at you.
Okay.
I get it.
I mean, Matt Grzelcyk has been a really good NHL player for a long time until last season.
He was awful last year. There's no two ways around that.
Yeah. And that's probably why you would have a shot at him.
And that's my point. If you are going out and getting a real defenseman that you're willing to pay a little bit of money, you should have no interest in him. But if you're spending your last $800K on your 6th D to fill out your lineup on the cheap, he's a left shot, first of all, so you can play him next to Malinski. He can, in theory, if you believe in him to have a bounce-back season, should provide quality defensive minutes on your third pair and can penalty kill for you.
Yeah. And I think he's only 30.
He is only 30, correct.
So it's not like you're talking about a 34-year-old
This isn't
where
a
you're
guy
like,
who fell off
maybe
the
it's
cliff.
just gone.
Yeah, right.
And maybe it is. Like maybe
It could be.
Maybe
It
it is
could
just
be.
gone. But it could also just be that after years of being a steady, very underrated, solid dude in Boston, that he just had a bad year.
Yep.
He's had a bad year and a walk year, and that will tank his value. And a team like Colorado offers him more upside on a
How
low
many times have we
contract to
seen
try to
them
rebuild it.
Do this with a forward.
Yeah. And, hey, he could go to, pick a bad team.
Get a little bit of money. And
At the moment, Utah doesn't have anybody signed to play on their defense.
they need some guys.
So, maybe they could sell him. They've got some RFAs they'll bring back, but
Of course.
they could sell him on. You could play top 4 here. You'll play a ton. We'll be a decently competitive team. Okay, that could happen. Or you could go play third pairing in Colorado on a team where your scoring could go up, your defense, you'll be given plenty of responsibility, and you'll have a chance to win all at the same time. Like, that's the sell job that Colorado has.
Yep.
Take less to do more. Congrats. I'm your marketing firm. Like, they take less money to do more things, check more boxes, and we all know postseason performance is such a huge, it builds value quicker than anything else.
Yeah.
So if it gets into the postseason and he gets minutes in the playoffs for Colorado, and he does well with them, it almost doesn't matter what he does in the regular season because look how great he was in the playoffs.
Yep.
I think he had 2 great and solid seasons with Boston before this. So the fall off is in the final year of his contract too, which is tough. So the money is what would be the question there for me because I would otherwise feel pretty okay with that gamble. But he's coming off a 3.6 contract, like his AAV.
Yeah.
So what is he looking for?
If he wants even 1.5, forget it.
That's where it would be a tougher sell. If the money made sense, I'd be all about it. You wouldn't have to ask me twice because I look at the past season's success as more reflective of what he'd be capable of. And the other thing, too, is he's not been a huge PK guy, but he's capable of it. Is it something at 30 years old? Can he build into that a little bit more?
Yeah.
To Jack Johnson's level? Because honestly, Jack Johnson was a secondary PK defenseman type of player, but he could do it. If you could get that out of him, I don't hate this as an idea because at 30 years old, there's an improvement over 37-year-old Jack Johnson.
I don't hate the idea. I don't love it. I looked at his name and went, this is totally a thing the Avs would do if he wants $900K
If they
or
can benefit
whatever.
from
Yeah.
a down year, an obvious down year,
Yep.
I'd be perfectly fine with that.
So,
That's exactly the kind of guy that they're going to have to get, though.
Yep.
Is a guy that is not coming off of a career year. They cannot swim in those waters right now. They have to. It has to be like fancy dumpster diving.
Fancy.
Yeah. Like you have to go look through the dumpster behind the Michelin star restaurant, not the Olive Garden. Although those breadsticks are bomb.
yeah, they might be better than the fancy restaurant, to be honest.
Too true, man. Some of those menus are ridiculous.
I'm saying.
What do you mean it's an aromatic experience? I'm trying to eat here. So, yeah, it's like maybe not fancy, but they have to pick the right dumpster to dive into, right?
Sure.
We're going to be talking a lot about guys whose value is not super duper high going onto the market. Guys that have warts that are coming off down years. You're not going to get a guy that's on the upslope where you're like, yeah, I love this. It's going to be one where you're saying, okay, I'm nervous here. Grzelcyk fits that bill, but the recent track record.
Yeah, they totally understand if you look at his last year and go, nope, don't want to do that.
What makes me nervous is that we've talked about it's a bad market, especially for defensemen. It's a bad market. And every team in the NHL just got $4 extra million to play with.
So teams are going to be throwing away money.
So it's not hard to envision somebody coming along and going, hey, we'll give you 1 year, $3 million.
And miss me with that. I am good without that.
Exactly. And the Avs are just like, we can't even compete with that.
Yep.
We have to be like 1 year, $1 million.
Yep. But you get to play for a team that could win.
And he has to balance, do I want to make triple the money in 1 year? And it all would set up for next year. If somebody gives him a 2x2, does that entice him?
A little security, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly. And does that entice him? Like, it's a hard thing to look at and say with any kind of confidence. So, yeah, the Avs will definitely be involved in this. It makes sense, but he's one of the slip through the cracks kind of guys where he's got to get to July 6th and have no deal. Yeah. Where he starts to say, okay, this is a lot more valuable now for me to go to Colorado.
I said it in our piece again on the DNVR.com. If he's the guy you get, he should be the last dude you sign in free agency. You should do all of your other work, make sure it's done, and then fill your 60 spot with, hey, this is the last guy left. We'll take him. We believe he can be a serviceable guy on our third pairing.
Yeah.
I do want to open it up to you guys, though. If you guys have any other names you want to touch on that you think fills that type of role. I know you mentioned Shillington already. You mentioned Riley. Riley may be a little bit more of a dream-on type guy.
It totally is. He had a great year with New York.
Do you have any, I guess as AJ put it, dumpster diving guys you have on the list?
There's guys who fall into like a tier below who we've been talking about that are maybe in the wait until a little bit later in the offseason and consider it. And it's like Brendan Smith, Erik Gustafsson. I think I'd be curious to see Kevin Shattenkirk. That one's a little bit like, that's maybe a tier below. And it is just because I liked Shatty. But that's a tier below in my considerations.
So we know that relationships drive the NHL.
Yep.
I say this all the time. Do you guys know who Erik Gustafsson's best friend is?
No. Oh, it's Landy, isn't it?
It's Gabe Landeskog. Yeah. They are childhood besties.
32 years old.
But you look at what he does well.
So
it is Avs.
It is. And I think there's more upside offensively than the Jack Johnson archetype. Like, he maybe isn't, like, he's not really a PK guy, but he is someone that in Colorado, he's not making it on their second PK, power play.
No,
but
definitely not.
He's great for load distribution. Like, he can eat up ice time, and defensively still pretty sound. So you just feel like that at 32 years old too. That's a player that would probably better complement a Malinski or a Jones on a third pair more than what we've seen in the Jack Johnson archetype.
I definitely would play Erik Gustafsson on my second power play over Sam Girard. Just me personally, I would do that, but it almost doesn't matter because of how little that unit plays in general. That it's like, it's cool that he can do it.
He'll be out there for 15 seconds. It's whatever.
Yeah, but he is a guy that can do that job though, and I would like it, but it does make you wonder. Next to Sam Malinski, are you now giving up too much defensively? Because it's not that Gustafsson's bad defensively. I think he's okay, but you have no physicality. Now you're talking about your second pairing only has Josh Manson. Your third pairing has no physicality. You fall into the very easy to play against conversation. But I think Gus is I think he's a great option. Brendan Smith is an interesting one. I
have always loved him, and I think like defensively his numbers aren't as bad as maybe reputationally what people think. Like when that name gets thrown around, like in looking through this list, he is not as bad as I think people think that he is, and it's certainly an improvement.
Definitely with Brendan Smith, what you're talking about is the Curtis McDermott hybrid. He plays forward, he plays defense. But he takes up one roster spot, and if he's your 7D 13 forward, and you're only paying him $900K, there's his value.
Yep.
And he's much better than Curtis McDermott was as a hockey player. He is still a bottom tier NHLer, and I don't trust him at any of those positions. But you could see where the value would be.
Let me say two things here, and then we do have to move on a little bit. Number one. if they do go out and get Gustafsson, Landy's playing for sure, right? Like the minute that guy signs, you're like, oh, Landy's coming back next year.
He's certainly got somebody to go on the road trips with.
And then number 2, I want to throw a name at you guys because you were talking about a potential lack of physicality. Ex-Av, maybe more of a 7 than a 6. Dennis Gilbert?
Oh, I loved Dennis Gilbert.
I mean,
I don't know, though. He...
that's definitely physicality.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's definitely a dude that'll... He just can't play. He can't do what the Avs want to do.
I know.
I worry about the health. Like, I just feel like he is always battling something.
Yeah.
And it's different things. And he's a warrior, so he, like, plays through a lot of things. And I think that's actually why these things have compounded over time for him. But I think he would be someone I worry about being available. And I didn't worry about that with Jack Johnson, and that was a really nice thing.
Really hard to have a guy you're probably calling a 7 have availability issues.
Yeah, that's a bad con.
Yeah.
What? Okay, last name, and then you can pay the bills,
ahead,
and then whatever. But Matt Dumba?
No, thank you. I have no interest in Matt Dumba.
You guys both immediately shook y'all's head?
It's nothing personal.
Damn.
He bad.
We got some haters. All these guys are kind of bad.
Yeah.
But they're
That's
like,
kind of why we're having this conversation.
I think we just have some, like, you have your emotional attachment to bad players sometimes. And it's like, I just didn't form one with Dumba. The way that I did some of these other players. Like, I loved Brendan Smith for such a long time.
If there's any emotional attachment to Matt Dumba, it's hatred.
I think that's what it is.
The
right?
wild stink is still there. Yeah. My thing, I wonder, he used to be a pretty good offensive, like, he used to be a pretty good goal scorer.
3 years removed from
He
that
used to be
now.
a pretty good goal scorer, and I wonder why that went away. He's not got great size, but he absolutely has physicality.
Sure.
It just, he keeps getting moved around, and teams keep taking these chances on him, and it's not going very well.
He had a bad year.
His underlings aren't actually horrible. This last year,
Pretty rough. Worse than Brendan Smith.
but doesn't play forward, so less efficient contract. I don't know, right-handed, so he in this scenario
Tough
would
fit
push
with that,
Malinski
yeah.
out.
All right, I hate it.
But, like, I don't know. If you're looking for a guy that you're trying to get, like, the last blood from the stone, again, these are the guys that we have to have this conversation about.
I would take Grzelcyk over Dumba.
Yeah, Matt Grzelcyk is a guy that I would bet he's much better than Matt Dumba, but that's why he's going to cost more money and won't come to Colorado.
It's possible.
I feel the money being similar between Dumba and Grzelcyk too, like in what they might be looking for. So it'll kind of come down to like who's more affordable between those two options.
Well, Dumba took the 1-year deal last year, and it didn't go great in
not
Arizona.
awesome. Yeah.
And then it didn't go great in Tampa Bay. I don't think it was a disaster, though. But it's like... if
Tampa was fine.
If
Arizona was pretty bad.
If he goes from the 4, I think it was 3.9 that he made
right,
last year, to, again, I'm talking, all these guys have to take $1 million to do this.
Yep. For sure.
I would have an interest. It's not like... I'm not, like, pounding the table over here, but... I do wonder, because he's not 35, you know?
The reality, the real world scenario here is you put feelers out to all of those guys, and you figure out which one says, yeah, I'll
Which
take
one
the
says
800K.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as much as I'd love to pick and choose, that's probably not the reality.
Yeah. That's fair.
All right. On that note,
That's your tampering period? You just send that text.
who wants 800K?
You pull the agents for all those guys into one group text and you say, all these guys have a 1-year, $900,000 offer. Whichever one says
First to
yes
respond
first
gets it.
is our guy. Thank you for tampering with us.
Look, we've talked a lot about the third pairing on this show, but you want to make sure your pair is a top pair with Manscaped. Go get yourself Manscaped. It's my pleasure to announce that Smooth Sack Summer is officially upon us. So get in with Manscaped. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pube to bum, all thanks to Manscaped. You can go get their new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. It's the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. With our exclusive offer, you get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code AVS. Go get with them. Summertime and the trimming is easy, as they say in that one song. That's definitely the lyrics.
Don't be a hairy daddo anymore.
What?
That's what it was. That's what Erik said last Friday.
Did he?
Yeah.
Nothing beats Friday read.
He was on for the first Manscaped read.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
For his birthday.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was top tier comedy to
Let's go.
just me and AJ.
Yeah.
How did he react to it? You know what?
From daddy to
There's
zaddy.
video evidence of it, so I'll just go back.
It's a train wreck.
Yeah, I'll just go back and look.
Once you're all trimmed up, make sure you're getting your bets in with ClutchBet. They have the most unique Colorado bets out there available. Right now, that's mostly just Rockies and Rapids. But, you know, Avs and Nuggets will be back eventually. You can get in on that. Broncos, too. Why not? I'm sure you can take some crazy futures on Bo Nix if you want to. When it comes to ClutchBet. Go get with ClutchBet today if you haven't signed up already. You can use code DNVR250 to get a $250 in bonus bets paid over your first 5 weeks. So it's a 100% first bet match. And be sure to keep an eye out for all sorts of amazing odds boosts, especially on the Rockies, Broncos, Nuggets, and Avs, and of course, all Denver sports. When you do go get with ClutchBet, make sure you download that sportsbook app now and use that DNVR250 code. Of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I want to pivot a little bit here,
Oh,
unless you have more to say.
pivot away from hairy daddos.
Yeah, directly in the opposite direction.
So no Yanni Hakanpää.
I mean, we can talk about him if you want,
He's a hairy daddo.
but I wanted to at least have the conversation of... let's start it here, and then we'll get into it. Realistically, the defensemen leading this class are Brady Shea, Shane Gostisbehere, and probably like Sean Walker.
Yeah, I think Nikita Zadorov's another guy that
fair.
Somebody's going to do something irresponsible for that fella.
Is there any world where the Avs end up in the conversation for any of those guys?
Yeah, in the world where they know exactly what's going to happen, say they find a taker for Val Nichushkin.
Sure.
This is extremely unlikely, obviously, but just roll with me. And they know Landeskog isn't coming back, and
so you
all
have
of a sudden,
$13 million now?
their salary cap space goes up like crazy. Sure, they could go get Brady Shea, but if you're Brady Shea, why are you coming to Colorado?
Yeah, fair. It's not like there's a lot of room for upward mobility in that
Yeah.
decor.
You're either displacing Sam Girard or Josh Manson, or you're on the third pairing.
Yep.
So it just seems like if you're trying to find, like, if they end up with that kind of money, most of it should go to their forward core.
Agreed.
But you could, and I love this dude. I think he'd be really, really good here. But Brendan Dillon is probably like a mid-tier option money-wise, term-wise, because of his age. His effectiveness, what he does well, fits really nicely with what the Avs need. He can play how the Avs want to play.
Shoots left next to Malinski, too.
Exactly, shoots left. And we get back to what it used to be when Byram was here, where depending on the night, you could kind of move a guy around and not have a first, second, third pairing. But you could have definitely a first pairing, and then after that, it was who's playing well.
Sure.
Because getting a Dillon next to a Malinski, yeah, on paper it could be a third pairing, but you could just as easily have your Warrior second pairing or third pairing with Dillon and Manson, and Girard and Malinski. Not my personal
I
preference.
like less, yeah.
It's not my personal preference, but you could see on a night when one guy is going, they
Sure.
can move these things around.
Yeah.
They can move the players around into different positions and just say, okay, well, that guy's playing really well. We're going to play him more. And would definitely give them a PK guy, would definitely give them a physicality guy. You know, and that's a guy that I have confidence is making it to market. I don't think he's staying in Winnipeg.
I think that or people close to him have said as much in the way that it's been talked about.
That he's not going to perfect.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. And I don't think it's coming directly from him, but it's how I see it talked about. But I think what I like about him, too, is there's a kind of a steadiness about him. Like, you kind of know what to expect from him that I think Bednar would appreciate, because to your point, he likes to switch those pairings up mid-game.
Yeah.
And having options like that, I think, only helps the bottom line. Like, it helps a Sam Malinski type to have some options too then, so that he's not just edged out of the lineup completely if somebody's having a tough night. And I think that it makes a lot of sense if the money's right, because he does seem like someone that will be coveted in free agency as well.
It should also be noted, two things. A guy like Dylan, Shea, he's top guys.
Kulikov would be my guy.
Some of these guys, absolutely. I'd be cool with that, too.
He's going to get the cup bump
Kulikov.
and not be affordable for the Avs, but
Kulikov. OEL, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even Brandon Montour.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, forget it. I'd lose my mind, but there's no chance he's coming to Colorado.
Yeah, weird fit. It's a bad class. All this extra money, these guys are all going to get overpaid.
Yep.
And that's going to make it like Brendan Dillon might be a guy that I'm like, yeah, please. But
he signs some 4x4 and you're like,
yeah,
whoa.
like he's going to sign something that is going to make my eyes bulge.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, never mind. We're good.
Yep.
Nope, don't need that. And, then I'll feel better about it. But also that team will have him and I'll be mad about it. So it's important to note that money teams are going to overpay because those are going to be the best ones available. The other part of this, qualifying offers are not. We don't go through the unqualified RFA process until June 30th, I think.
Yep.
So we're talking about we're not going to know who all.
Some dudes could spring up last minute that
There
are
always
unqualified.
are.
Yeah.
There always are those guys where you're like, oh, that's an interesting name. That's an interesting name. There's always a couple of surprises, and that market this year is especially ripe for a couple of guys that are going to pop onto there that you just never know.
Yep.
Utah's grip of RFAs makes you wonder, are they going to qualify all those guys and bring back the exact same defense? Are they going to try to mix that up a little bit more? What's their approach to it? If one of those guys shakes loose out of Utah, I'm in. It doesn't even matter which one. I like all of them to varying degrees, and I think they would all fit and help. But it's hard for us to be like, here's this guy, here's that guy, here's that guy, and then June 30th, the RFA list comes out. All
There's
the
a bunch of
qualifying
other
offers,
guys.
15 guys get added to it the day before free agency, and you're like, oh, tough.
I think that each year I'm expecting Florida to win the Stanley Cup. And I think that the team that wins a cup, usually teams draw inspiration to some degree from that team. And because of how sound defensively Florida was and their commitment to making that a solid part of their lineup, inspires other teams to prioritize that position. And so I think that will also shape the interest in skilled defensemen this offseason. I think, too, there's players like Chychrun who have expressed interest in being moved or will be moved, most likely. That also enter consideration that it's kind of an interesting time then for all of these defensemen. I think that there's going to be added value for that position, but there's also a lot of competition for these defenders as well in terms of teams and what types of numbers they can be handing out.
The trade market is always hard to decipher, too, because you don't know what teams have planned in free agency. You don't know what they're doing with the RFAs that don't get qualifying offers. But you do look at a team. The easiest way to do it is find the teams that have no cap space and figure out where they might want to move money. The Noah Hannafin contract, to me, felt like Vegas giving away Shea Theodore's extension. So I wonder, what about a Shea Theodore? That's very expensive trade-wise. He cost $5 million in the cap. Could you make something like that work?
Where's Erik? somewhere he's been summoned.
Really trying to summon Erik. They also have Braden McNabb on an expiring deal. Now, it's still pretty cheap, but that's a guy that I wonder, with his physicality on a third pairing, that's exactly what you're after.
Sure.
So the trade market is a lot harder to figure out, especially because teams are they just don't want to move those guys.
We're about to jump into that, just so you know.
Yeah, we are.
And I'm going to throw out some names, and you're all going to look at me and go, no. That's what's going to happen in the next segment. But before we do jump into that next segment, we are brought to you by the beer literally made to chill. It's Coors Light. You know you're going to be sipping some on free agency day, watching all of the moves roll in, or rather have them all be announced because they've all already been decided 3 days beforehand and everyone's already leaked everything. But instead of getting crazy about that, you can relax with Coors Light, and you can get it delivered right to your front door with CoorsLight.com/DNVR, thanks to Instacart. So go check them out. Obviously, Coors Light brewed right here in Golden, Colorado, so it's your Colorado local beer, even if it is all around the country. Make sure you get with Coors today. Of course, they have. They also have, the banquet beer if you're looking for something a little bit heavier than a light beer, but Coors Light, the way to go. It's the easy drinker, at least for me. It's the beer I reach for when I want to chill. So make sure you get with Coors Light. And again, use that CoorsLight.com/DNVR to get beer delivered right to your front door. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And once you've got a Coors that you're chilling with, make sure you also go check out Infinity Park in Glendale. All summer long, they're doing movie nights where you can go out there and enjoy different movies. They are completely free to go to, too. So it costs you nothing to go enjoy a movie over at Infinity Park. You got to go check it out. Of course, it is also the home of the Colorado Raptors rugby team. You can follow our rugby podcast with Colton Strickler at DNVR_rugby on Twitter. Go check that out. Make sure you save, the date, not this Monday, but next Monday, June 24th. They are having that movie night with The Marvels. Gates open at 6 p.m. and the movie starts at 7 p.m. You're encouraged to bring your own chairs, blankets, pack coolers with your favorite snacks, and do all of that stuff. Just make sure you leave the glass at home. And for those not bringing food, there will be food trucks on site to enjoy while the movie is playing. Again, completely free to go to a movie night at Infinity Park. So go check out their family-friendly event at Infinity Park today. Last period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, that trade market. All right, let me make you guys mad really quick.
All right.
I don't think this is a good idea. I'm not saying that the Avs should do this, but it was just something that came across my timeline.
And is it through an Avs lens, specifically?
Yeah, it's through an ALLCITY lens.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
Our sister site at PHLY was having a conversation about moves they would like to make this offseason. And they really want to get rid of Rasmus Ristolainen.
Understandable.
Would you have any interest at all half retained?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so, but had to at least throw it out there.
Is he playing forward? He's still an expensive fourth liner. No.
My point being, in a world where the Avs are looking to move on from a Josh Manson or Sam Girard, to pick your fate, whatever.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to do that in a situation where they can get money out without taking money in?
It depends on how they want to do it.
Okay.
Like they might need to put another, a night to meet. It would have to be like a Girard / Manson and like a Miles Wood or a Ross Colton.
Sure.
And you bring somebody back.
You're talking about a bunch of different moving pieces in that trade at
like
that
it's
point.
much. It's a much bigger deal where suddenly you're moving out $10 million and you're taking back $5 million. It's a little different.
Yeah.
That's something that you might entertain. But when it comes to Ristolainen, he's just bad, man.
Fair.
I'm good.
What's the story on his injury from this last season that he had surgery on?
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Ruptured tricep tendon.
Ow.
That sounds really painful.
I don't know that there's an injury where I'm like, that sounds cool.
No.
They all kind of sound
Just
painful.
the word ruptured is like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't know. That doesn't. Okay.
It's not a leg injury. He can still skate.
No, right? Like, I'm looking at it. Would this have impact past this last season? Because that's a very hard out in that case.
For sure. No interest in just taking on your dead money.
Yeah,
No.
they just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just.
Well, especially with Manson. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, that's too much money to have then spent on Manson and a player of a similar-ish mold.
Yeah.
And that would be why it would be a no for me.
Totally. I knew what the answers were going to be before I asked that question, but
But if the Finns have a say in this team, which I feel like they do now, that is a component we haven't considered.
Yeah.
Mikko Rantanen's making the decisions here. And he's
Finnish
bringing all his
national
friends.
team.
I feel like Lecky would be the godfather in that group.
I do too.
Mikko would be the muscle.
He's like the welcome committee, but Lucky's the head of this operation.
Yeah. He's the one sitting behind the desk. Miko's the one that walks you in the door and shakes your hand a little bit too hard to send a message.
I
Yeah.
think Miko's the
Don't
one
look
that's
at him in
holding
the
the
eyes.
gun to the back of your head, probably.
All right, we had to go dark. All right.
Is this why they can't go get the defenseman Sebastian Aho?
Yeah, because they're all friends with the other Sebastian
Right.
Aho. Yeah.
Lecky's going to hear the name Sebastian Aho and get excited, and then this Swedish version of a Sebastian Aho is going to walk in the room, and he's going to be like, no.
This is not.
Yeah, that little fella gonna come rolling
when
in,
you
and they're
order
gonna be like,
Sebastian Aho off
"Aw,
Wish.
I got bait and switched on an Aho. This is not what I wanted."
But
Yeah, exactly.
the point I wanted to ultimately get to here is, if the Avs are in the market of trading for someone, could they find a realistic fit on defense? It feels to me like it would be pretty hard to find a defensive trade that they really could make work.
Well, I wrote a whole article
Go read it, by the way.
it's coming out tomorrow about fake
Go read
trades.
it.
And I do have multiple defenseman deals in there,
There you go. So you found a way.
including one with Seattle where I bring my Bay Will Borgen to Colorado.
So he's just living in fantasy
At what
land. Got it.
cost?
It's a lot. I got
it
Sam
involve-
Girard, Ross Colton, and Callum Ritchie.
That is
What?
a lot. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it all right, but it's more than Borgen coming, I'm assuming.
And Shane Wright.
Yeah, that-
Okay.
I understand the Richie part of it then, at least.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So I've also decided that I want to get one of those defensemen out of New Jersey. With Nemitz and Luke Hughes kind of graduating full time, Dougie Hamilton coming back from injury. They've just got one too many guys.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of attention on the $2-3 million guys. I personally want Kevin Ball out of there
Sure.
because he's 23. He's only $1 million. He's gigantic. He blocks shots. He hits. He kind of does the
If you're looking for the
that stuff.
responsible defensive physical third pairing guy,
exactly.
I totally get
and,
it.
And he's
Yeah.
just cheap. And he's an RFA for a couple more years. That's kind of my approach. With some I would like to use that 2026 second for a guy like that.
Sure.
But he's got to be cheap. I see Chad has mentioned Ville Heinola. I would be a lot more into that if I thought the Jets would actually be willing to do something like that
Same.
with half of their defense fleeing,
Yeah.
maybe even the country, literally. It might finally be Heinola's time, but I would be very interested in Ville Heinola if they were. If they thought they could find a deal, that's exactly the kind of guy that I would be curious about. But yeah, the trade market is always
It's total fantasy. of
This
course.
time last year, we did not know that they were getting ready to trade Alex Newhook for a first and second round pick.
Oh my gosh, that was right around the draft.
Yeah,
too.
and then flip the second
For
the next
Ross,
day
yeah.
for Ross Colton, and it was just like, huh,
We were all like, "What's a Yanni Fairbrother?"
Yeah.
And it turns out nothing.
Yeah, it
That
turns
was
out-
Ross
nothing.
Colton.
Yeah.
Ah.
It turns
Got
out,
it,
oh
got
man, he's bad. So, Urho Vakanainen is another guy that I'm going to keep my eye on.
All right, look.
If he doesn't get a deal.
Seattle's new to this, or not Seattle. Utah's new to this. They don't know what they're doing. Just convince them that Juuso Välimäki's bad.
Oh, that's my dream right there. Like, send them the second round pick so that they can have 11 second rounders over the next 3 years. Yeah.
That one's Miko approved.
The 11th
There you go.
is the one that makes the difference, okay? Then they can trade all 11 for somebody they like. Or 2.
What, if you're a GM, genuinely, and someone calls you up and is like, look, I'll give you 11 second round picks for this guy.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd react. Like, is it like Devon Taves?
I don't think I would say yes if it was Devon Taves.
I might, because you might just be able to turn around and be like, all right, I'm going to take those 11 and I'm going to send 4 to somebody. I'm going to send 4 to somebody else. I'm going to send the other 3 to somebody else.
That would be an all-time trade. Utah, make it happen. Going off the rails a little bit, but I dive into the trade market in part to tell you guys, get prepared for your final ever, potentially, Roast My Rosters.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure exactly the date it'll happen. Probably sometime early next week would be
Yeah.
my guess.
I would plan for Monday or Tuesday.
So it's probably still a little bit too early to be submitting them to Cap Friendly, but start thinking about it. Start getting your moves ready that you want to make through free agency and trades in the draft.
If any of you steal my Seattle trade,
I don't think anyone else could have
Yeah.
come up with that.
Yeah.
it took me a long time. I even ran that by a couple of people. Like NHL people, not
Yeah,
just I
yeah.
went on Discord. I ran it by and they were like, it's pretty interesting. I was
That's-
like, yeah, it is.
Jets decline.
The other ones are a little, that's like my one like big blockbuster. The other
Sure.
ones are like, huh.
Somewhat more realistic. Yeah.
I mean, I trade Val Nichushkin, so who knows if it's
Well.
realistic or not.
We'll find out one way or another in about November 16th or something. Somewhere
Fun-
around then.
We'll find out tomorrow when you guys read that piece.
That's also true. That's all I had. Anything else you guys wanted to add on the defensive conversation for free agency? No?
No, I mean, we're going to talk more about it in the
Of
next
course.
2 weeks. So
We'll drill down into more specifics, as always, between
Yeah.
that and the draft over these next 2 weeks. It'll be a lot of fun analysis.
yeah.
So
Oh, I will say I did release a draft thing today. Go read that.
go read the draft thing. Lots of content.
Yeah.
Over at the DNVR.com, like I mentioned. Always a great time to become a diehard. We are out of here for today, though. We appreciate all y'all hanging out. We'll be back tomorrow. I assume we'll talk draft tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure, though. We'll talk to you there. We'll see you then. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.